let's be serious. How does Amanda Seales' framework reproduce Robin DiAngelo's white fragility, simply transposed into a black voice for a professional managerial audience, Pascal?
It's a very good question. I think the way she does that is that the analysis that she provides is divorced of political economy. So it's all about changing hearts and minds, even for black people. So if black people kind of change the way they look at the system and work together and basically got reparations, then everything will be okay, as opposed to trying to challenge capitalism and ask for class-based remedies that will help them kind of collectively change society overall in the way in which they're relegated to, the subaltern, if you will, by becoming the redundant workforce in American society.
Toussaint, did you want to add anything to
Um, I was going to ask you that, Jason.
that?
How did she do that? I I can
Like a
only.
magician.
This is going to be the entire show with me, at least. So we're going to have to depend on Pascal because I don't know why you subjected me to this footage of this woman. And
Did you watch the debate thing?
I watched the whole thing. And
No,
then
you didn't.
I watched her subsequent interviews afterwards where she explains her stances even more, which some people said, why would you do that if you thought you won? Okay. I watched FD Signifier talking about black conservatives with cameo guest star appearances from none other than the Pascal Robert. I
That was like 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
he was still cooking. I was watching a lot of things.
Mhm.
And I don't know why I I paid you your $20 back. Why are you subjecting me to this?
I don't think, and I don't know if Pascal agrees with this. I don't feel like, first of all, she was really talking to black conservatives. And if you watch that interview, one of the things that happened, and this is a real problem with why I think a certain amount of liberals don't try to talk to black people because they can't really deal with the lived experience rebuttal.
Mhm.
And what was happening was that she was like, I think at one point she says, black on black crime isn't real and it's a product of underinvestment and over policing. There's a lot of truth to that. But some of the people she was talking to were like, well, I live in an area full of Negroes. And the problem isn't that there's too many police, it's that there's not enough police. And I've actually been the victim of these Negroes.
Not only that, polling tends to show that many black people who live in urban centers tend to want better and more policing. They don't want police brutality.
Yeah.
They just want, I mean, the perfect example of that is Cedric's last book. He talks about that profusely, in that black people don't want to abolish the police. They want better policing and they want more effective policing, at least the ones who live in those kind of urban centers.
And there was really no response that she had for that because generally there is no response for that. The liberal response for that is either nice police, right? We're going to give them body cameras and the pronouns are going to be on their badges. Um, we're going to take away their batons and give them these softer batons. They're
Oh.
bendy. They're bendy. So it doesn't break the bone, but it wraps around almost like a whip.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
um, but there really is no answer. They have no talking point for that. So you just kind of put people in a category, and that was the problem with those shows is you're just talking at somebody because you believe everything that you think that category is they embody. So she believed, okay, you're a conservative, so you believe all these conservative things, and she's coming at it from a real '90s perspective that you believe everything, I don't know, Farrakhan said in 1995 at the Million Man March, or you believe everything that Donald Trump says. I don't
I
even think they bring up the Farrakhan point because I don't even think people talk about him anymore to the way that as important as he was, and forgetting a guy like Farrakhan, forgetting the Million Man March, I think opens the door for people like the late Charlie Kirk to regurgitate those same things when they were hyping up that Blexit a few years ago.
Well, let's remember what is the job of the reactionary, what conservatism's attitude towards black people is. They first of all they conflate the black poor with all of black people. So they will say black people. The problem with black people. So it's not the problem with black people. It's the problem with poor and economically disenfranchised black people. So their whole function is to make it seem like black people are the only people who are failed by capitalism, which is not true. And that the key to that failure is that black people are somehow dysfunctional or culturally dysfunctional.
Yes.
But the question I would ask is that if black people are dysfunctional, what made them dysfunctional? Were they dysfunctional when they came off the shores from Africa 200, 300 years ago? Or was there a system in which they were stripped of the economic capital that allows them to actually function in society by things like redlining, things like Jim Crow, things like sharecropping up until the 60s, things like having 50%, over 50% of the poverty level of black people living below the poverty line up until the 1960s, things like basically having mass incarceration be a part of black life from the late 60s all the way up until today. Those social dislocations have effects on shattering and fracturing stable social infrastructure like family structure. People always talk about, oh, the black family is destroyed. Was it welfare that destroyed the black people? No, it was the fact that during the 60s and 70s, you had higher rates of unemployment for black men, and they could not participate in normal family life because they could not subsidize their families. And as a result, they turned to crime, and you had an increase in mass incarceration. But these kind of things, which are more difficult to explain, don't give room to the right biting into stereotypes about black dysfunction because unfortunately black dysfunction sells. It's easy to look at black people dysfunctionally and say that they are culturally broken, they're fractured, they're failing as a people because that kind of blame them attitude is how capitalism works. Capitalism is rooted in seeing the fault of society in those who are victims of capitalism instead of realizing how capitalism has failed them.